Okay, in this video we're going to be talking about access definitions that start with the letter I. And the first one is importing. Importing is when you bring data into Access from another source. So the way you import is you go up to our External Data tab. Normally you'd probably be on the Home tab, so you just click over to here. And you have a bunch of different options for importing, but we're going to go ahead and import something from Excel. So you click on that, and you're going to browse to where that file is on your computer. Go ahead and browse. Find the file that you're looking for and open it, or I should say click on it. So it's selected here in the browsing window now. And we're going to import the source data into a new table. You can also link to the data source, but we're going to import it. So we click OK, and then this is the import wizard, and you can see that it says your spreadsheet file contains more than one worksheet or range. So you can see it's selected on Show Worksheets, and it's showing 4 different worksheets that I have in this Excel workbook. So I have to choose which one I want to do. And I've created one for this example called Employees Import, and I'm going to select on that. And now it's giving us a preview of the data from that worksheet. So it's got our first name, last name, home phone number, and our employee office ID number. So that looks good. We're going to click Next. And it asks you if the first row contains headers, and it does. So I'm going to click that. And you'll notice that now it's selecting those as headers, or headings, I should say. Click Next. Now it gives us an option to modify our field names and our data types. So our field name is the column heading. So I've already named these how I want them to be named, so I can leave them all, but you can always check your data type, and then if there's something you don't want to import, you click this and it will skip that field, but we do, so we'll leave this. You can also index the field. This would be if you're using a primary key or an identifier that you want to be indexed, but in this case we don't need to do that. So we have first name, we can click on last name, you see it shows this data type and everything. Home phone number, same thing. And then office ID, and you'll notice here it's automatically selected double digits, and that would maybe be okay, but we're just going to go with integer, so it's a number field. And then it is saying it wants to index them. We don't need to index these, so we're just going to say no, and then we'll click Next. And then it's asking if we'd like a primary key, and it can assign its own primary key, and that's what it's done here. If I already had a primary key in here, I'd click choose my own primary key, and then I would select it, but I don't, so I'm going to say yes, let's do that. And you can see now it's giving a key or an ID number to each of my employees, which is perfect. So we'll click Next. It asks us to select a name for the table. We can have the wizard analyze the table to see if it wants to break it up or various other things, but we're not going to do that because we already know what we want, and we'll just click Finish. You can save your import steps if you want, if you're going to do something over and over, but in this case we're not going to do that, and we'll click Close. And there's our table right there. So if we click on that, you'll see it's imported it, and we have our field names here. We'd probably want to go in and change this to employee ID, something like that, so it's a better identifier. But there we have our table imported from Excel. And of course you can import text files, XML files. There are more options down here. You can see some of those. You can import from Access, and then you can save import operations and use those for kind of repetitive tasks. If you import a specific spreadsheet from a specific source, every day or 4 times a day, then you can create a saved import and save yourself the time from clicking through the wizard. Okay, so that's importing. I'll close out of this. The next one we're going to talk about is indexing. Indexing helps to locate and sort records more quickly. This means the database will maintain a list of the indexed fields. It basically does the sorting ahead of time, so it seems faster for the user. If you index a field in a large database where you do frequent sorting or searching, like by last name or state, it will speed up the searches. It will slow down the overall database when it's doing updates, but it will make your searches go faster. And I'll show you where you go to index a field. Actually, we need to be in design view here. So when we're selected on one of our field names, in design view we have our field properties down here. And down here you'll see where it says indexed. And it basically gives you an option to choose whether it's indexed or not. And you have a drop down here. Right now we have it set for yes, indexed, and we want no duplicates, so it won't allow duplicates. And that's because this is our primary field, and it's an auto number, and we want each employee to have a unique identifier, so we don't want duplicates. So that's set correctly. If we were okay with duplicates, then we could say duplicates okay. And if we didn't want to index this at all, it's not a field that we're using to do searches or sorting, then we could say no. And you'll notice when we go to select on, here I'll click off of this, when we go to select on this one, down here where it says indexed, you'll notice it says no, right there. Because these don't necessarily need to be indexed. Now let's say we're going to do a lot of searching and sorting by last name in this employee list. We could certainly go in and have this be indexed. And there is a chance that we could have two people with the same last name, right? So we can say duplicates okay. But that's just going to tell Access to keep a sorted list of all the values in this field, of all these last names, so that when we execute a sort or a search, it'll just happen quicker for us on our end. Okay, so that's indexing. We'll close that. It's going to ask us to save because we made changes to the design, so we'll just say yes, that's fine. And the last one for the eyes is input mask. An input mask helps you control the values that you enter into a field. You can use input masks to add dashes, spaces, or parentheses. So again, if we go to our employees table and we go to our design view, let's go to our home phone number. That's probably the best example. We can go down here to our input mask field property, and if we click in there, we'll get a little box with 3 dots in it, and we click on that, and it's going to bring us up a little wizard, an input mask wizard. And that gives us some options to essentially put a mask on the data that's entered so it looks better. So you can see this phone number has the parentheses, it has a space, and then between the digits it has a dash. So if we wanted to use that one, we can even go try it out to make sure it's going to work. We just select in here and we can type in a phone number. And we see how it works, and if we like it, then we say next. It shows us the actual code for that. And these zeros indicate required numbers, and the 9s indicate optional numbers. So we could actually change this if we wanted to and make these all zeros as well. I'll click out here so you can see it. So that would require the entire phone number with the area code. And of course I can just Control Z to put it back to how it was if I prefer to let the area code be optional. And then down here it gives you a placeholder character. So this is just going to put a dash, but you could have different characters just to indicate that that field needs to be filled in. But the dash is pretty standard, so we'll leave that. And then of course you can try it again, especially if you've done modifications. So for instance, if we change these, we turn these to zeros, and we go in here and we try and type in just a 7-digit number, and we hit enter, it's going to give us this error. Okay. Of course, if we put our 3-digit area code in as well and hit enter, it's happy with it. Okay. So what do you want to store, or how do you want to store the data? And you can have it store the information that you've entered with all these characters and spaces, or you can just have it store it as raw data and then display it with these. So the most common is probably to do it without the symbols, because the main reason is that it takes up a lot less space because you have a lot less characters, so it'll allow your database to run faster, especially a large database, because it's not having to sort through these characters as well. So that's the most common. There are instances where you might want to use this though, but we'll leave it like that and click next. Then it's happy, so we just click finish. And you can see it's put our input mask in there, ready to go. Now we can go to the table and go to datasheet view. Yes, we'll save it. And if we're going to enter in a new thing, you notice it's giving us that input mask now. So we'd put in our phone number, hit enter, and you see it stores it as raw data, but when we go to enter it in, it gives us this kind of nice clean layout. Okay, so that's input masks, and that's the last thing for the eyes. So we've covered importing, indexing, and input masks.